back, everyone, to the Body Pod. Today, I'm so excited to have my guest, Erin Carson, on today. So, Erin, thanks so much for joining us.
It is just blowing my mind that we are talking right now because I just love what you're doing. Thanks for including me.
I'm so excited. So, I have to tell you, I feel like we're friends and yet we've never actually met.
Agree.
But I have been following you for years and I live in Longmont. So I've been to Raleigh. I did like the swim lessons with Dave Scott. I've done like the group ride sessions with Grant. Was it
Yeah.
Grant that did
Yeah.
them? So I feel like I was always, kind of in and out of your gym, and I'd always be like, "Where's Erin? I need to see Erin." I think I saw you once, but I didn't dare say anything. So now we finally meet.
Yes, we do. Yeah, it's been I was part of the rally sport community for 30 years, so a lot went down there and a lot of people came through and a lot of people we made so many friends and we learned from each other and we taught each other and we grew up together. So it was a really magical place and just a massively cool part of my life.
Yes. Well, and I feel like I moved to Colorado, Boulder County, and I think 2012. No, maybe 20, no, 2007, 2007.
Nice.
It's been a long time. But I feel like Raleigh was like
Yeah.
the gym in Boulder. All the pro athletes work out there. So it was this huge impact, in Boulder. And like you said, you owned it for over 30 years.
Well, I wish I owned it for 30 years because there were a lot more profitable years before I owned it. But I worked there for 20 years. And
Oh,
then the opportunity presented itself for me to put together an investment group and purchase it myself as the managing partner. And it wasn't hard to put together the kind of investors that I needed, and I had to put that group together relatively quickly. It was a little bit of a timely deal, but I knew
yeah.
that the rally sport story was not over, and I was really, really happy and proud to be able to bring it together for about another 13 years. So, as part of the
Yeah.
investment group, managing partner for 13 years, but I treated it like I owned it for a long time. So,
Yes. Well, I mean, and you're kind of like this celebrity in Boulder. Everyone knows about you. I'm so excited to pick your brain on all things, kind of talking about a little bit about the endurance side, but also just your experience with women. As you know, that's all I coach,
yep,
and really focus on that kind of aging into 35, 40, and beyond.
right.
So I'm so excited to ask you all of these questions. First of all, do you coach just pro athletes or do you work with age groupers in the endurance world as well?
I work with age groupers. I work with professional athletes. I really attract high performance human beings. And
Yes.
so the story, I always ask myself, like, what is the role that the professional athletes play in my life? Like, what is the role and what is the story? And it really is that the work that we do together gets put on a stage for the world to see when you work
Mhm.
with somebody who goes to the Olympics,
Yeah.
or when you work with somebody who wins Kona, or when you work with somebody who wasn't even on the a blip on the radar to be one known as one of the best in the world, and then all of a sudden they are. And what was
Mhm.
changed for them? And
Yeah.
so the story with the professionals is a wonderful story, and it challenges me, and I dig it because I want them to ascend to live their dreams as
Yeah.
professional athletes. The people and the age groupers and those of us, I know you're a triathlete and an endurance athlete, I am as well. It's funny because it means the world to us that we maintain or attain a level of competency to the level that we are capable. So we
Mhm.
all have our DNA, we all have what we are capable of, and we measure our own success by improvement for ourselves, and our friends and our community admires that we have the tenacity to do it, and we have
Mhm.
the ability to say no to social things when we have to go to sleep because sleep's so important, or it's the age groupers are fascinating for me. I am one. I appreciate how hard it is to have a full-time job and be able to work and maintain your health. But the bottom line is the people that surround themselves, the people that are surrounding all of us are in awe of the fact that we're so committed.
Yeah.
It's not about our results. They don't
Mhm.
they think it's amazing we did it, not
Yeah.
that we podiumed. And then there's
Yes.
all the other people that just they don't ever want to race. They just want to be the best version of themselves, and I love those people as well. So they make up a big
Mhm.
part of my business as well, and the people I get to spend time with and work with. So it really is the full spectrum. I think that the thing people hear about the most are my pros, but
Mhm.
they're only part of the story.
Yes, and you still being in Boulder, I feel like Boulder is this, you hear the Boulder bubble, but, like, everyone is super fit. The majority of people are super fit. Everyone's kind of in this, some kind of endurance racing, which is so amazing. So it's kind of unique to a lot of different states and cities and counties in the United States.
Yes.
But do you say, like, do you also have, I'm guessing, like, a large amount of coaches that work for you or worked for you at Rally that just people that weren't in the endurance world, but still just wanted, like, that strength and conditioning component of being strong?
Yes. Yeah, I had a team of 26 trainers at one point, and that was a big part of the success of our club was the
Yeah.
people who worked there, and that we all lifted each other up and we all taught each other and we worked together and we shared um we shared knowledge. We learned from each other. We didn't compete with each other in a bad way ever. And
Mhm.
I was really, really privileged to not only be part of creating that group of people, but also being part of that group of people. The
Mhm.
relentless pursuit of continuing education to be known as one of the best in the world because not just of the performance of your athletes or your clients losing weight or whatever, but because you just wanted to be a bank of knowledge and keep up with the current research and understanding, or even question some of the research. Like I know you and Stacy are good friends, and Stacy's a researcher. She is contributing to our society and our generation in such a powerful way. But
Yes.
even I love having conversations with Stacey. She's like, "Well, that's a crappy study," or that was a very good study. And unless you have the ability to dig in the deeper realm of studies, what is a study? What is a good study? You know.
Yes.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
my team and I've learned so much from the people I've had the chance to work with alongside as a professional as well. So, and that's
Yeah.
global now with how we can connect with each other.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I was on your app back when I lived in New Jersey from 2017 to 2020, back east, and I was still racing Ironman until I had a knee injury that kind of was like, "You're done." But we'll get to that because I feel like one of the things that sets you apart, at least from, like, an age grouper
Yeah,
that was just, like, doing your programs and, in this world of endurance racing where it's very time consuming for, as you said, for an age group athlete, because
yeah,
we have kids, we have a job, we have, all these other priorities. But I loved your attention to the mobility portion and having, like, that foundation program, because I think it's so easily missed in the majority of online programs where any influencer can have a program and you're like, they don't even know what they're doing.
the internet has played an interesting role in our industry. Yeah,
Yes. So
yeah,
can we talk about, like, what is your take on mobility? Does everyone need it? Does it change as we age, and where does that fit into a program?
yeah. I think the most important thing to understand is we all have a movement bubble.
Mhm,
So if I threw a football or a baseball or a softball at you right now, you would have the ability to reach up and back and catch that ball.
mhm.
Or you wouldn't be fast enough, or you wouldn't be limber enough or move well enough to be able to move quickly in space.
Yeah.
So tissue changes as we age. And one of the first things that led me into this genre of movement and understanding movement on a deeper level was the team at Institute of Motion. And Institute of Motion is led by Michal Dalcourt. Michal, Michol. I'm Canadian. I'm a dual citizen actually now, but a lot of my Canadian brothers have been some of the best educators in the fitness industry. And Michal invented the Viper, a tool that sometimes you'll see in my social media. You'll see it in a lot of
Yes.
my programs. It's just a weighted tube. And at the time that that was invented, Michal was coaching a bunch of hockey players, and he just started realizing that the kids that didn't get injured that much in hockey, in professional hockey, had
Mhm.
grown up on farms, and they never really had traditional gyms. They never went to a gym. They threw bales of hay. They chased cows. They drove trucks. It was farm strong is what we kind of referred to it as. And we
Yeah.
started to develop programs, and I was lucky because I'm a little bit older. It's funny to be lucky because you're older, but I hit the window of learning from these guys that really reverse engineered amazing performances.
Mhm.
And we started talking about the movement bubble, and we started talking about tissue health, and we started talking about fascial lines, and we started not talking about so much about developing muscle.
Mhm.
And we started to understand that muscles do not work in isolation. They work in integration, but we all come from bodybuilding.
Mhm.
That's the gymnastics from Jack LaLanne, Arnold Schwarzenegger. They launched our industry. So there's
Yeah.
always going to be so much to be learned, and there's so much to be said about developing a muscle in isolation, but understanding that unless the shoulder and the back and the chest are strong, the biceps won't grow. And
Yeah.
so many times people go in and they want to build the biceps. And again, I'm just old enough. People come to the gym because they want to do curls and preacher curls, isolation curls, and because they
Yeah.
want big arms, and it was one of those things. And you could put that all the way down to the calves and the guys in the gym that wanted bigger calves. And well, you're not going to get bigger calves unless your hips work better. And the
Yeah.
pelvis is two pieces and it needs to move. And so we started realizing that movement can form this foundation of athleticism, of integrated muscle function, and athletic performance that would serve a life and a lifetime of activity in a really, really good way. So
Yeah.
it became this massive story of function. And we had to stop looking so much at muscle, and we had to start looking at movement, and we had to start looking at tissue, quality of somebody's tissue.
Yeah.
When people they're getting plantar fasciitis, or they're getting posterior tib issues, or they're getting not so much soleus, but posterior tib is big and plantar fasciitis is big. And why is that?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because the feet are so far from the circulatory system, and it's the first bunch of tissue that becomes dehydrated. And when tissue becomes dehydrated, it becomes vulnerable. And
Oh,
and we have to, if somebody's like, my calves are blowing up when I go to the track in the morning, or why in the morning when I wake up, I don't, it hurts when I walk. You've got to get your electrolytes in. We live in Colorado, so I mean, it's so important if you live in a dry climate that there's not just water. Water is not enough. You got to have the
yeah.
electrolytes and be able to hold the water, and that you can't just sit at your desk and drink from the water bottle all day and think you're hydrated. Movement causes tissue hydration. You have to move to get tissue hydrated.
Oh,
So that's kind of where it all started, and then it just kind of went ballistic from there. I mean, probably the next great mentor is a guy named Thomas Myers, who
yes.
wrote a book called Anatomy Trains. And
Mhm.
so Thomas Myers, and Haley, if you haven't done this, you got to do it. It's called the Anatomy Live, and it's hosted here in Boulder. And
Oh, I'm doing it.
you spend 3 days and you dissect a human body that has been donated to us to learn. And on day
Yeah.
one, you take all the skin off of a human body. And on day two, you start to take apart the fascial lines of the body, and you start to understand the impact that fascia and scar tissue and incidents in people's lives and how they hold their posture impacts under the skin how we move. So
Mm.
nothing has ever been more profound than that experience. I've done it 3 times. I can't stop doing it because I
Yeah.
every time I do it, I just learn more and more and more, so
Oh, I'm signing up for that
you
as soon
want
as we
to do
get
it.
off.
It's mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing, but
Oh,
you'll never look at a human being the same again.
okay, I know that I run dehydrated all of the time. It's terrible. And now I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little bit better with drinking more electrolytes, but I would suffer from dehydration, like migraines anytime I'm on the bike and it's either a harder session or just a very hot, like the first of summer. Always, it's terrible. And I mean, think of all
Yeah.
my muscles that are dehydrated.
It's a big deal, you know, it's really the foundation of great performance and better health. You know, said another way, your hydration is your blood volume. And if our red blood cells are our working blood cells to provide oxygen distribution to working muscles and performance, and that is running like a lazy river
Yeah.
rather than a busy river. We want to be a busy river. We want nutrients to be able to move in and out. We want our tissue to be supple. And
Yes.
you know, Kelly Starrett, who I'm sure you know who that is. Kelly wrote the book, one of the
Mhm.
first books available to all of us for movement, The Supple Leopard.
Yeah.
And he is a very very much a leader uh, for me and for many of us that do what we do. So
Yeah, I love that. So, if somebody were to come in, let's just say women. I know you train both women and men, but
yeah,
a female comes in at, 45, 50, been pretty active, but, kind of getting new into the strength training and everything. Do you see common mobility issues with either male or female, but let's just say female, in this age, kind of like over 40?
yes, yes, the front side of the body. So if we refer to fascial lines through the anatomy trains through the teaching of Thomas Myers, we're gonna
Mhm.
the first lines that I'm gonna look at are the front line of the body. So that includes the quads, the hip flexors, the pecs, the abdominal muscles, the front of the head, the SCM, the sternocleidomastoid, all of that. That's part of the front line of the body. If the
Mhm.
front line of the body presents as short and we start to see a forward head, we start to see the ribs a little bit too close to the hips, but with a big breath we can get taller, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden, oh okay, so there's an opportunity. And so you might see, I consider them opportunities. So
Uh-huh.
when somebody walks in and they show shortness on the front line of the body, I know it's a huge opportunity to make immediate change. Because you know, when people are first starting or even if they're already very active,
Mhm.
if we can show them immediate change, an immediate difference in the way that they feel, they will buy in a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So through opening up the front line of the body and getting them to use the diaphragm a little bit more actively in breath, and even understanding the expansion of the rib cage and the decompression of the spine, or to
Mhm.
get them to acknowledge that with daily living, not even an endurance athlete, I don't run, I don't do anything, I just live. Well, gravity is hurting you. It's
Yeah.
putting this force into your body that shortens you and makes you smaller.
Yeah.
And usually it's going to, we as females, we have breast tissue, so we have to, that's going to pull us even more short on the front line. So if we can get the expansion of the front line of the body, the expansion of the rib cage, some decompression of the spine through breath work, and we can open up and separate the right and left ilium, the pelvis,
Mhm.
and open up the anterior capsule of the hips. So a lot of people want to stretch the psoas, and I can challenge people that the psoas is part of the issue of shortness on the front side of the body, but
Yeah.
so is the big rectus femoris, the big quad muscle, the big front leg muscle, and so is
Mhm.
the iliacus. So I don't even hold them accountable individually. We just think of it as the capsule. The
Yeah.
front side of the hip is tight. Let's just open it up. And through a series of movements, we're going to open up the front line of the body. If the person leaves and they breathe better, their brain is going to feel better. They're going to stand taller. When they walk in the house, their husband or wife is going to say, you got a little spring in your step right now. You got a little bit of your mojo. I just got off another call where one of my athletes' husbands, he was like, I just thank you for helping my wife get her mojo back.
I love that.
So mojo is kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So my goal the first time I see somebody is that they leave with a little bit more of a spring in their step. So when we open up the front line of the body, we can then access and strengthen the backside of the body. And then we can
Oh,
create a lasting scenario. So
I love that.
that's a really fun way to look at it. And, like people that do what we do and people that do anything to help large groups of people or groups of people, we want to make an immediate impact. We
Mhm.
want that chance to get a second shot at it so we can keep coming back because it takes time.
Yeah.
Tissue doesn't change in a week. It
Yeah.
changes, it takes 5 to 7 weeks for connective tissue to change and
Mhm.
remodel. And so we have to make it a little fun
Well,
along the
and I
way.
love yes, and the breath is, like, the most important part. I feel like
Yeah.
not maybe from the client side, but from the personal training side, whenever I've done continuing education with, different coaches,
Yeah.
I feel like it's the module where people are like, "Okay, that's kinda boring. Breath, whatever,
Yeah.
like, give me to the fun stuff." But it's all like, that's so important. I love that you start with that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about something that I also think is commonly forgotten, and that is the importance of the feet.
Oh my God. If the feet ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Right? That's kind of
Yeah,
like if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. But it's the
yeah.
feet. It's always the feet.
Mhm.
Yes,
Oh,
my sister.
do
It's
you
the feet are everything.
yeah, do you find, like, I know you've talked a lot about, like and what I see when somebody comes in and I have a lot of, like, CMOs and CFOs and CEOs, so they're always, like, they're at a desk or they're traveling a lot, they're in high heels, and
Yep.
so all of this, like, the ankle mobility is crap on the
Yeah.
majority of women, like, that's just a given that I'm like, 8 times out of 10, maybe even 9 sometimes,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a limited range of motion in the ankles.
Yes, and so the feet and ankles, it's just a big deal in getting people out of shoes and potentially training barefoot when possible or when it's
Mhm.
appropriate, which isn't always.
Yeah.
But when you can walk around your house barefoot, it's helpful. It's proprioception for the toes. We
Mhm.
do take people's feet and shove them into shoes, and the toes become very close knit friends, and they need to be able to express themselves. And so
Yeah.
once somebody walks in and you observe them standing, the next thing I really do want to see if they'll show me, and it is a personal thing. Some people are very self-conscious of their feet, and
Yeah.
those feet could tell stories. They can tell lots of different stories, and you can sometimes tell. And sometimes I'm like, what happened to number 4? Because he's standing straight up. Like it's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know why that happened 5 years ago. All of a sudden that started changing. Well, that's something we need to be concerned with, or
Mhm.
something we want to see if we can get that toe that's a little more bent and a little more cramped. See if we can
Yeah.
get him to relax a little bit. But
Yeah.
it is a fascial consideration. I love it when my athletes and my people are not afraid to get pedicures and have somebody actively work on their feet if they will.
Yeah.
The massage and the tissue care for the feet can be very, very powerful for how you feel and how you stand. I am a fan of toe spreaders when appropriate, and
Uh-huh.
or yoga toes, I guess they call them. And I just want to really put an asterisk there that these are a tool designed to only be worn for short periods of time. 10 to 20 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. Some people 5 minutes is enough. You shouldn't wear them all day, and you shouldn't necessarily wear them all night. So toe
Yeah.
spreaders or yoga toes they're good for your brain as your brain discusses the world with your feet. So
Yes.
uh, ankle mobility, the 3 key areas of mobility, the ankles, the hips, and the thoracic spine.
Yes.
So if the ankles, and I live in Boulder, and I don't have to deal with a lot of people who do wear high heels. And
Yeah.
I recognize that this is part of our cultural business affliction. Like this is part of the deal. I guess wedges were a good invention for women who could find something where the heels weren't as elevated for the toes
Mhm.
and the foot wasn't at such an extreme position. But if you have experienced that or had to live like that for a while and you want to gradually change, then just accept it will be a gradual change. Don't try to change it
Mhm.
overnight. Again, 5 to 7 weeks for a little bit of change to start. So I think it's a good thing to get out of high heels, but it's not always possible or realistic for people not to do that.
Yeah.
To be able to go in and out is a good plan. So
Yes.
yeah, the pedicures are good. I do a lot of work with feet and ankles. My number one athlete who is qualified for the Olympics, the only female qualified right now for the Paris Games, is Taylor Knibb, and
Yeah.
Taylor had a fifth metatarsal fracture that was because there's very little blood flow in the feet. That's why we talk a lot about feet. They are vulnerable because of the lack of blood flow. But
Yeah.
she had to have a screw put in there. So we talk a lot about the forefoot and how it spreads out, and why if you get the privilege of hanging out with little children who haven't been sitting in desks for very long, like they're 4 years old or 5 years old, their little feet just spread out every single time they step,
Yeah.
and and that's one of those things that as adults we can recapture that. We just have to be a
Mhm.
little bit more focused on either buying shoes that are half size bigger than maybe normally we would. And as females, I used to love that my foot was an 8.5, and then I went and saw Ian Adamson talk, and he's a great ultra endurance athlete, and he talked about, he goes, buy your shoes half a size bigger, and your feet will get bigger, and it's not a bad thing, people. And it was just like, oh no, you want so I started buying nines, and now I'm pretty happily in a Hoka 9.5, and my feet are way happier. So
Yeah.
they did
Crap,
get
I'm gonna
bigger.
be in an 11. That's harder to find.
I know. Yeah, it was a big that was a big aha moment. That was a weekend of a mobility clinic and education. But yeah, feet, you're not wrong. That is super important.
Yes. Well, okay, let's move up to the hip.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I find that the hardest movement to teach somebody who's new to strength training is a proper hip hinge, and being able to use the hips for force and power without, like, disassociating it from the back so that they move separately and not as one unit.
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
find that too?
Yeah, the hinge is everything though, right? Like so the if you cannot hip hinge, then you shouldn't be under load. And this is where I sometimes get so frustrated with the perimenopause and the menopausal group of women who really we're somewhat desperate. I'll say we because I'm part of that group of women. And if you haven't been active through your 30s and your 40s, and now you're hitting perimenopause and menopause, and you're hearing, oh, lift heavy shit and you've got to be
Yes.
under load, it can seem very daunting and like you're behind the eight ball. So you try to rush the process. And it's
Yeah.
very I use the word dangerous. It's kind of dangerous
Yeah.
because if you cannot hip hinge, you are endangering the integrity of your spine, and I
Yes.
can't say it any other way. So for me, and this is, Haley, this is the beginning of a good friendship, and I will, one another really good friend of mine, Eric Goodman, Dr. Goodman, who invented foundation training.
Yes.
I use foundation training to teach the hinge. I reinforce the hinge daily. Even though when people get really good at it, they still come in because they live a life of sitting at a desk or sitting in a car, driving kids
Mhm.
here and there, or they're on bicycles all the time. So
Yeah.
that hinge is unhinged
Yeah.
almost daily. So it's not something that is part of a fix and now you can hinge and now we move on.
Yeah.
It's a daily practice of hip hinge, spinal integrity, spinal decompression, and just doing it in at the airport. I mean, when I first started doing foundation training as an instructor, I found the most important place for me to do it was at the airport because I don't sit still very well anyway. But when you put me on an
Yeah, me too.
airplane, I don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
So having that hinge in place and having that tissue prepared to sit,
Mhm.
or when I get out of the plane, get ready to walk. Like it's been a really great practice for me. and it's very different. The difference between yoga and foundation training is tension.
Mhm.
So there's tension in the body with foundation training, but it moves at a very similar pace as yoga. So it's not a big workout, but it's attention to detail in hinging, rib cage expansion, spinal decompression. So
Yeah.
it's been a very good anchor for me with all of the strength work that gets built on top of it.
Yes, do a founder, right?
Yes, do a founder, hashtag do a founder.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that's amazing. So, when we're talking about, like, let's go to the lift heavy shit,
Yes.
because I have people come into my programs all the time,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Well, Stacy Sims says," and I'm like, "I'm aware. I was
Yep.
just at
Yep.
her house. We're
Yep.
launching a program. I know what she says." But, this concept, and we even did a podcast on it, and she's like, "Listen, there is a progression. Like,
Yep.
you have to earn the right to be able to get to these movement patterns. And you can't just go in and be like, well, I'm supposed to lift heavy. And so that's the only rep range is I do 5 reps and under. There's different rep ranges and they're doing different things for muscle metabolism and all of this. And that's a really hard concept for people that just come in and zone in on one thing. And yes, we do need to be lifting heavy because the majority of women aren't ever getting down into those rep ranges. But that doesn't mean, and I'd love to hear your take on this too. That doesn't mean that it's the only rep range that we use.
Nope. And Stacy and I have a few programs that I developed with Stacy for her audience because again, she's a researcher.
Yeah.
She inspires us to provide guidance and leadership for this community of women that she's educating.
Yes.
And so the biggest conversations that we had before both books, whether it was Roar or what was the other one on
Next level.
Next Level,
Yeah.
and I love that she includes Celine in there too, Celine Yeager, and because and Stacy have really, to me, they're just such leaders.
Yes.
But the biggest thing is, I believe 3 to 5 times a year you're in a heavy phase. If you're an active female, so
Yes.
if your only sport is going to the gym,
Mhm.
then you could probably do more. But if you're running 10Ks, a marathon, doing triathlons, skiing, going to
Yeah.
Mallorca to ride bikes, going to Italy, doing all of the things, then your strength program needs to be developed around all the things.
Yes.
Because the research does show that when you're actively trying to get better at running or you're actively trying to get better at cycling,
Mhm.
you cannot get better at lifting. They will
Yeah.
compete. They will compete with each other. And
Mhm.
for the people that want to look up into the research, it's called concurrent training.
Mhm.
And it's good. There's good studies there and there's bad. But for the most part, it really truly makes sense. When we wake up in the morning, we only have so much energy. And
Mhm.
if I want to do well at my sport, whatever it is,
Mhm.
then I can't go try to win at the gym as well.
Yep.
So there are times like we're just coming out of about 3 or 4 months here in the northern hemisphere when there hasn't been a lot of racing. So
Mhm.
there's the Jingle Bell 5K or the Turkey Trots, and
Yeah.
those aren't usually the races that people are trying to PB at.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are coming out of the winter here in the northern hemisphere, and they've been doing a lot of heavier lifting in the winter.
Mhm.
And now we're kind of coming into this transitory time of much more activity. Beautiful day today, went out and played 18 holes of golf. People are out on their bicycles, they're doing all kinds of things.
Yeah.
We can now feather into maybe one heavy lift a day, a week,
Mhm.
and one hypertrophy lift a week because we still need to develop muscle mass. That's another thing, right?
Thank you.
So I'm sitting here and I look at your beautiful shoulders, like those don't just come out of the womb. Like you work for those.
Yeah.
And the rep range where those shoulders are built aren't is not 5.
Yes.
So we need maybe one heavy day and it's an undulating periodization, one
Mhm.
hypertrophy day, or maybe it's 2 hypertrophy days, depending on your body type. I
Yeah.
would probably go one strength day, 5 reps,
Mhm.
and two 8 to 12 reps because I can develop muscle, but I'm not naturally muscled. So I have to
Mhm.
work a little bit harder at it.
Yeah.
There's some people that they should do 3 to 5 hypertrophy days a week
Yeah.
because they are very low on muscle. And I know we don't have time for it today, but I really think you need to get some of those people to talk about Ozempic and these weight loss drugs because a big side effect of these weight loss drugs is muscle wasting and
Yes.
malnutrition. And so if you are listening, guys, and you're on these are beautiful drugs. They're meaningful to the society that we live in. But if you're not lifting weights in conjunction with that plan, you need to start because
Yeah, you're
it's
in
an
trouble.
important thing. So you don't build muscle size in a 5 rep range. You build
Yep.
it in an 8 to 12 rep range and you learn to lift to failure. And even in a 5 rep range, I don't know that you should lift to failure in fives.
Yeah.
So having good programming and cycling and periodizing your plan is really, really important. And I look at things in a 12-week plan, 4 weeks
Yes.
of endurance training, 4 weeks of hypertrophy training, 4 weeks of heavy lifting. And
Mhm.
then we look at who you are and what do you need more of. And then we can
Yes.
undulate those 3 phases so it's fun and interesting. And
Mhm.
there's going to be things that certain people, they love the fives, and some people love the 12s, and some people love the 20s, but they
Yeah.
all have a place. So I think we're very well aligned. You and I've been listening to your stuff, and I think it's really smart.
So I need to like just gonna post this on my Instagram like 10 times in the next month because I feel like that message is getting missed. I'm like,
Yes.
you guys, A, it's not safe to lift only 5 and under all the time, especially for these women that are postmenopausal and the estrogen isn't there and the inflammation and the injury risk. Like, you don't want to be getting injured in your 50s. It's going to take you a lot longer than like someone in their 20s.
Yeah, and some of it is irreparable. And as a I- I'm a I'm patient to a fault because when somebody does sit down with me and want to do a plan with me, I assume they're never going to leave me. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, and in year 3, we'll start doing so
Yes.
people that don't do well with me, they're like, "Well, I don't feel this training at all." I'm like, well, you're achieving a lot. You might not feel it until we get into the next phase, and you have to trust me that we're going in the right direction. But
Yeah.
let's get a routine. Let's get some adherence. It doesn't just come and go, come and go, come and go. It's a commitment of a lifetime. And
Yes.
so yeah, I think there's a time and a place for all of it. And
Yes.
yeah,
Well, and I
but
always
I
say
don't want.
this.
I hate it when people hurt themselves and listening to getting on some of those Facebook pages where people are like, well, my left shoulder hasn't been right for 6 weeks. I don't know what I should do. And they go to the Facebook page for help. And I'm like, A, I'm so sad you did that. But B, you're looking for affirmation. Like if you really want help, you've got to go to a doctor. You've got to find a PT. You have to have a community of support. Not girlfriends to say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, my shoulder too. It's not helpful. Let's go to the doctor, let's find out the facts, and let's
Yeah.
deal with it, and let's get better.
Yes, and I always say, like, listen to the leaders in this space, and you're one of them. I say that there's, like, the one percenters, like you, Stacy, and, like, these people that I'm partnering with that know way more than me. They've been doing it for, years and years longer than me, and so I am always trying to align with these leaders, and then when somebody's like, "Well, but I heard this," I'm like, "What are the leaders saying?" Like, listen to them. They know what they're talking about.
Well, and thank
Oh,
you for giving us a voice because A, you're smart and your messaging is right on point. And then when you get, people like Stacy and the doctors and all of the people that I've listened to on your podcast, they're
yeah.
brilliant. It takes a
Yeah,
lot
I
to get
mean,
me captivated. I've been
yeah.
captivated.
Well, thank you so much. It's just like I feel like there's so much misinformation that I always am like, who knows the most? And I have like again, you and all these other people that are the one percenters, and they're not. If someone's trying to sell you only one specific way of training, or there's a product attached to it, be a little wary of that. because,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good people with a lot of good information, but like, listen to them and let the other noise of social media of anyone that's, saying they're an expert. I'm like, look at who they train. So, I mean, that's how I found the partners that I have right now. I saw these really great athletes, and as important and, amazing as they were, I was like, well, who's their coach? I mean, and that's how I found you. I actually started barefoot like training because of you, like years ago.
But
So,
it helps when you own the gym because,
yeah,
it's not normal to be barefoot in the gym, and,
yeah.
it's pretty shocking for people sometimes, and, the time to train barefoot is when your fatigue level isn't too high, there's
Mhm.
no pain in the feet, there's no pain in the back,
Yeah.
then barefoot training and going under load with
Mhm.
bare feet will make the whole structure function truer to its form and
Yes.
truer how nature intended us to move. It gives us a beautiful opportunity. But I train people in shoes as well. But I would foundation training. We are 99% of the time we're in shoes or out of
Yes.
shoes. We're barefoot. The barefoot movement. People, if some is good, more must be better, and they destroyed themselves running up mountains with no shoes, like the Tiramaro or the runners run to be free to
Yeah.
be run or whatever
Yeah.
that born to run. I
Yeah.
think too much too soon. But
Yeah.
yeah, we want the beauty of what nature intended for us as
Yes.
much as we possibly
100%. So if I were to come to you and I'm like, "My knee hurts," where do you go from that? Do
can.
you
you know
do you
the
only
you
look
know
at the
the
knee?
this is a leading question. If I very rarely deal with people's knees unless there's trauma. So if there's
Yeah.
a past injury or if there's
Mhm.
trauma, like my dog, like I have a boxer and he is crazy and he ran into me because he was playing with his friend. That's a different story. But
Yeah,
if you come
acute.
in and you're like, I've been running and my medial knee is hurting, then I'm going to go to the hips and the ankle and the feet.
Yeah.
So we need to strengthen and make sure the ankle is moving well, that the foot is
Mhm.
moving well. The position of the feet when somebody stands, if they stand like a duck with their toes turned out,
Mhm.
very commonly that's tight external hip rotators. It's nothing to do with the feet, it's further up the chain. And with bar method, their whole goal with bar is to strengthen the glutes. So the intention and the full body, but they really like to focus on the tush. And the biggest problem for runners, and I live in a community where most of the women are runners,
Mhm.
it's just a big part of our community. If you go to the bar method and you turn your toes out and you do 100 squats, your
Mhm.
butt will hurt and your external rotators will become shortened
Yeah.
and your inner thigh muscles will become tight because they're trying to create balance. And when a tight muscle becomes tight, so your whole inner thigh now, your whole adductor complex is dysfunctional and it's designed to internally rotate the femurs and create straight knees. So when we
Mhm.
have externally rotated hips, our feet are turned out, and then we want to go for a walk or a run, the knees are not conditioned in a nice straight line. The knee is a hinge joint. It
Yeah.
can rotate, but it's not built to do a lot of it. So
Mhm.
the hips need to find balance. And a big part of foundation training is internal rotation of the hips. And anytime you run, when you land, the only way you get over that landing leg in a beautiful, clean way is through hip internal rotation of the landing leg. So
Yes.
that beautiful gait of beautiful runners that we love to watch is usually because they have incredibly balanced hips. They have strong adductors. They have strong inner thigh muscles and they're balanced with the outer hip muscles. Remember when the mini band came out, the mini loop
Oh,
band,
yes.
and everybody's
Mhm.
like, "Woo! This is amazing! I can feel my glutes," and
Yeah.
it did. It lit up the glutes. But you have to have the internal rotation to balance it. So I have found over the last probably 5 years, I almost barely use a mini band anymore because
Yeah.
we're I'm trying to undo the mini band,
Yes.
and external rotation, if you want to just talk about function of the pelvis, that SI joint, a big complaint is usually tight hips.
Mhm.
If your hips are externally rotated, your SI joint in the back is inhibited. So
Yeah.
we need our hips to decouple, right? They should move like this.
Yeah.
If you can see me, like just they should move in a nice straight line. One should drop and the other one should elevate, and it's just kind of like that. But a lot of times when the SI joint is stuck because the hips are externally rotated and the femurs are stuck in external rotation, you end up moving like this. So you're moving around instead of front to back, and
Ugh,
that is a movement pattern that we need to correct, and we need to
yeah.
free it up so that the body can be free,
Yes.
because we do get stuck in that SI joint. And I that's one of those things when people email me that my left hip is all of a sudden my piriformis is all lit up and I have sciatica, and I'm like, do you have a physical therapist or a chiropractor that you trust? And
Yeah.
they're like, well, no. And I go, A, you need to find that person. Go to your local running store, find
Mhm.
out who they recommend, who are the runners going to,
Yeah.
and find that person and build them into your life. Because,
Yes.
if you train enough, things will happen and you need to be able to get out of trouble.
Mhm. Oh, that's such good advice. So if we
It's a big
move
answer to what would you do with someone with a knee, right? It's like, well, a lot.
I I wish I would have had you as my coach when I was racing, and I was like, "I knew it wasn't the knee until it was the
No.
knee because nothing else was working."
Yeah.
Oh, boy. So, let's talk about the glutes, and
Yeah.
do you believe in sleepy glutes and not the glutes don't activate, or what's your opinion on that? And, like, what do we need to do with the glutes? Because everyone
Well,
talks about it and
let's hit rewind really quick. When you asked me that what I first do with people is I look at the front line of the body.
yeah.
The front line of the body. There's a concept called reciprocal inhibition.
Mhm.
So
Explain that for those that don't know.
when the front line of the body, let's really dial it into the hips. When the hip flexors and the hip capsule is tight on the
Mhm.
front side of the body, it inhibits the function of the glutes. So it
Yep.
inhibits the function. They're still working, but they're not working optimally.
Mhm.
And so my biggest pet peeve is when physical therapists, chiropractors, doctors, anybody with any level of power and strength in their words tells somebody that their glutes aren't working.
Working, yes.
And they are working, but true to many things in life, could they be better? 100% they could be better.
Mhm.
And the way that they get better is just like we were talking about the adductors, the tightness on the inner thigh, because there's tightness on the outer thigh. Like it's just
Mhm.
you're meeting tight with tightness with tightness.
Yeah.
When your front side of your hip is tight, which 9 out of 10 of us have tight hips. This is just true.
Yeah.
We need to open up the front side of the body, reach for the sky, just that big open in the chest, open in the hips. Then we work the glutes, and we can strengthen the glutes much better if we do the precursor mobility routines that get the hips moving instead of just shoving yourself into a bunch of lunges.
Yeah.
So the glutes always are an opportunity.
Mhm.
So I don't look at like, oh, this is bad. This is a deficit. The glutes are always an opportunity. And I started working with Jocelyn McCauley. I'll name drop. She's racing this weekend. This podcast will probably come out after the race, and hopefully she has a good day. But she's in New Zealand, and I've been working with her for about 8 weeks, not very long. And
Mhm.
she went for a ride with a friend of hers in New Zealand. She's there right now, and her posture just freaking changed because of the breath work from foundation training. We
Oh,
did not load her heavy at all going into this race. That would be ridiculous going into an Ironman.
yeah.
Um, but he said, your butt looks perkier. It looks like your glutes are working, because when you have this softness and this weakness in the front side of the body that just
Mhm.
pulls you into this tightness on the front, you don't express the muscles on the back, which are the most powerful muscles we have, whether they're postural or whether they're force producing. The glutes are the biggest, strongest opportunity to produce force.
Yeah.
Um, it was an amazing text to receive today, because it was only 8 weeks and we did zero deadlifts. We only had 8-pound dumbbells, but through foundation training, single leg work, and just some body weight stuff, we got her glutes functioning better. So
Mhm.
they got in the game. I'm a basketball person by trade, and it's kind of like playing 5-on-3 with
Yeah.
somebody who has a well balanced body and well functioning and strong glutes against somebody who's only got three people playing. You might have
Yeah.
strong heart and lungs, but your hips aren't working well. You know, so it's daily routines to keep the glutes working well and the posture strong and tall. It's all part of
Yes.
the package. It's a big opportunity in 99% of the population.
Yes. Oh, so finishing, going up to,
Yeah,
like, thoracic spine, shoulder stabilizers, another big thing, like, everyone I feel like has rotator cuff issues,
yep,
um, or just, like, they can't even get into any extension because of the thoracic spine and just the way that we live with our lifestyle.
yep.
So, I mean, where do you what focus do you put on that?
It's interesting. People's shoulders tell a story of their life. So the older they are, the more storied their shoulders become, because we can protect ourselves so
Mhm.
much. And whether you threw a baseball your whole life, or whether you slept on it on your whether you're a side sleeper and your right shoulder is internally rotated. Again, I will anchor into foundation training, because Doc Goodman has provided us so many amazing tools for
Mhm.
postural integrity. It's usually not a shoulder issue. It usually began with lack of rotation through the thoracic spine. So then we started asking the shoulder to do too much. It's a
Yeah.
very shallow joint. The AC joint is a vulnerable joint. So if you're
Mhm.
not turning, like, if I'm not a swim coach, but I've watched a lot of swim coaches and I swim, I
Yeah.
know that I have to turn my shoulder, or turn my chest when I extend my shoulder. If I swim flat in the water, I'm going to end up with shoulder issues, because if I'm not turning,
Yeah.
right? So the same thing, whether it's bowling or golf, anybody that's golfing, it makes me almost cry, because golf is such an amazing game and people love it so much. But
Mhm.
as soon as they get weak in their upper back, they start to lose posture and they get that kyphosis,
Yeah.
that bent over. And go back, reverse, it's like the tightness on the front side of the body inhibits the back.
Yeah.
So if we want to go into the gym, before somebody goes under load with a seated row or a bent over row or a deadlift, they have to be able to hold that spine and that chest really open. Or anybody that's had a breast surgery in the past, a special attention should be paid to thumbs to shoulders. We do arm
Yes.
tracing with foundation training, thumbs up into the armpits, elbows up nice and high, wrap the hands behind the head, reach over the head, reach all the way back behind the head, drag the thumbs back to the shoulders, and then all the way back down. That is an eye opening routine that just should be done every single day. It's usually shoulders are a victim of a weak thoracic spine,
Yeah.
which is no longer being asked to mobilize. I think one of the most fun periods of being a personal trainer was when we got permission to rotate.
Yeah.
We come from bodybuilding, if you're old, and powerlifting, where everything was a barbell. And then all
Mhm.
of a sudden it was a dumbbell. And now it's cables and bands and vipers and things that enhance mobility and movement. And we recognize it was Dr. Mike Clark who started the National Academy of Sports Medicine, the NASM.
Mhm.
Mike was like, he was a physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, who started saying, let's reverse engineer, where are most of my patients coming from? It's from picking stuff up off the doorstep. And now we all use
Yeah.
Amazon. Stuff's always on the doorstep. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like they hurt their back picking up something heavy, and they don't do it the way we were told. Don't lift with your legs. They just grab it and pick it up
Yeah.
and rotate and go into the house. And he said, we have to train people like this.
Yeah.
And I can remember my clients loving it. They're like, you want me to pull like a lawnmower? You want me to push like I'm pushing with one arm and the back arm is moving backwards. This is beautiful. And so people love to move. It enhances their mood. It makes them feel better. It makes them friendlier, happier. Like
Yes.
the way that the body was intended to move, it's just was an exciting change for all of us. You know, playing
Yes.
catch. I play catch with a lot of my clients as a warm up. You know,
Oh,
got
that's amazing.
baseball mitts. I bought some lacrosse sticks. Like catch is amazing.
Yeah.
So there's just so much that can happen. So shoulders and rotator cuffs, yes, bands and rotator cuff exercises, but even just catching things and changing hand positions on rowing motions, and like there's so many fun ways, and doing single arm or alternating arms, and it's so great. It's so much
Yeah.
fun what we do.
Oh, okay. Erin, I'm so mad. I have this whole list of questions. I didn't look at one of them.
This is great.
I need to have a whole series with you because I seriously, like, my brain is, like, all exploding with all of
If
these
anybody ever
questions.
cancels, just call me. I'd love to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I'm definitely scheduling some things with you because this has been the most fascinating hour. So I so
Thanks,
appreciate your
Amy.
time, and I'm taking you to lunch, so be
Let's do it.
let's do
Let's go
it.
for a bike ride.
Okay, yes, that's even better.
Done.
Well, thanks for coming on, Erin, and I look forward to chatting with you soon. Thanks for listening, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and sharing the Body Pod with your friends.
Until next time.